Hello everyone and welcome to my new video. And what is this video about? And welcome to my new well, I shall tell you. First, I'm just going to delete that. So what we're going to do, and I'll delete that as well. What we're going to do is we're going to play around with some granular synthesis concepts, but we're not really going to do granular synthesis, actually. It's not quite going to be like that. We're not going to use any sort of granular synthesis stuff that I'm familiar with. We're not going to use a granular synthesizer, but the results that are going to come out are going to be, are going to sound like that. But we're going to do it in a weird way, because that's what this channel's about, doing things in weird ways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in sampler. You're going to need sampler for this. If you don't have sampler, I'm very sorry. You're not going to be able to take part. That's a shame. You should really get it because it's, I think, one of the best samplers out there. Well, actually, I haven't actually tried that many because I've never needed to, because this one just does everything I want to do. So I'm going to go and get some vocal samples. I've got like some vocal samples that are a little cheesy, let's be honest, sort of, oh my goodness me. Sorry, that was so loud. Sort of, stuff like this is that, just little, just like little session singer scats, things like that. All right, let's just use that one to start with. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use the Midi keyboard, as in Midi notes from 0 to 127, to jump to various points in the sample. And I'm going to do that by simply using the key to sample offset setting in the Midi tab. So we're going to whack that up full. Before we do this, we're going to need to go back to the sample tab and turn the scale down to 0. That basically means that the pitch or transposition of the sample, once the root key has been set, will not be spread across the keyboard. Every single note will play the sample at the original speed. But the thing is that the note will jump to a different start position. So right now on my push, I'm right down on the very bottom note. Oh my goodness me, it's so loud. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's just turn that down a bit. So that was the first part. If I go an octave or 2 octaves up, we go a little bit further. And if we go a little bit further, we get, eventually we get to the end. So if we look at the keys here, you can see that I'm up here at C6. And we're kind of at this part of the sample. Get it? And if we go down to like the bottom, to C2, -2 rather, we're at the start of the sample. So we can whiz up and down the keyboard or the push or whatever you're using and jump to various points of the sound. So this is going to be one of those videos, I'm just warning you. I'm going to pick a different sample. Oh. This is... What? These are all like Mickey Mouse. These are all Alvin and the Chipmunks sort of. Okay, this one I'll do. Okay, so we need to put the scale back down to 0 for this new sample. So, you might be thinking like, I could just use like simpler for this. I can just slice a sample 64 times. Yeah, you could do that. But the thing is, doing it this way, you actually get 128 locations because the entire Midi keyboard is scaled across the start position of the sample. So when do things get granular? Well, after I just have a quick sip of wine. Okay, so to start with, we're going to use the arpeggiator. We're going to use the arpeggiator to re-trigger a note very, very, very fast. We're going to turn sync off and we're going to put the gate to, around about 90. And I'm just going to hold a note. Okay. So now we're just stuck on this position here. So if I jump to a different position, or rather a different note, we're at a different position in the sample. If I go an octave up, a couple of octaves up. I'm doing this on the push. I should have got a keyboard to do this one. Yeah. You can see, follow the orange line. Okay. So with the arpeggiator, we can create these kind of clusters of notes around the note that we're playing in order to create these sort of granular textures. So what I'm going to do is let's start with the style to up, and let's pull the distance down to 1 and the steps up full. Just see what happens. We get something like this, see? So we're sort of cycling around in a ramp fashion around this part of the sample. Okay, so I'm triggering, I believe, B2 here. And it's cycling up 8 notes, which is kind of just means that it's looping around this bit, which is kind of fun. So if we pull the gate down, get a more choppy sound. We could try some different styles. We could go up, down, and it'll sort of ping pong. Although it's going very, very fast. Let's pull the rate down a little bit and see if we can... Oh, it's not going up, down. What's going on there? Let's try. Oh, I think that's I think I've misunderstood my own idea here, and actually that doesn't really matter because the steps are... If I did a chord, let's actually take the distance off and the steps off, and I played like a chord. We can find these like interesting little percussive zones, if you will. So yeah, that's fun. I'm kind of into just doing it like really fast. So let's bring back the steps and distance thing. And now let's go for random now. Let's see what... There we go. Now we've got this kind of classic sort of granular jitter. Okay, let's make it even more so. So I'm going to turn the re-trigger off on the, this global envelope here. And basically what that means is that the envelope will not be re-triggered on each new MIDI note. So we're working at very, very fast MIDI here, 17.9 milliseconds. So if I turn that off, the envelope will not be re-triggered globally. Instead, a new envelope will be generated for each new MIDI note, which is great. I love it. In fact, I don't even know why I don't just have that turned off all the time. So what that means is that with a high polyphony of, say, well, let's just go full polyphony, 32 voices, we can get like, we can increase the release time of the sample and get this more cloudy kind of sound. And we can... Oh, look at them. So obviously when you let go, the sample will just play until the release point. If we bring in a little bit of attack here, let's maybe play around with this curve here. Maybe let's do the same for the decay as well. We can get these interesting clouds. Go right back down to the bottom. And we can also, because we're using an arpeggiator, we can hold down multiple notes and jump to various points of the sample. So it's kind of fun. Obviously, like, you know, I'm using not particularly great examples. No disrespect to the lady who sung these samples. I'm sure she's very talented, and maybe she just had a little bit of bad direction from the producer or something. But you know, if a sound is not to your taste, then make it your taste. You know, just you don't just disregard a sample because you don't like it. Maybe take it and turn it into something you do like. You know, yeah, you know. Turn it into a load of ooh, 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 oohs. Okay, so But it doesn't really stop there, because what we can do is we can introduce more like MIDI processing to give us more options. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a MIDI clip, and I'm going to draw in a note here, and let's maybe make this twice as long. Okay, that's fine. And I'm actually going to just select the note, hold shift, and go down to the very lowest octave, C2. So that means that that is going to play absolutely dead at the start of the sample. So you can see as we play around with the steps and the distance here, what's happening is that when the arpeggiator receives a MIDI note, it actually adds more MIDI notes on top using the distance. So the distance is how many notes, the interval between the notes that it's going to add, and the steps is how many times it will do it. So what it's doing here is that it's adding one note. So if I put it up to 8, that's going to go chromatically from the starting note up 8 notes. So if I start the clip, there we go. If we go a little bit slower, you can see that it's kind of, watch over here as well. And now watch down here. So we can bring in the pitch, now that we're just working with the MIDI clip, we can bring in the pitch and use the pitch to actually offset that position as well. So we can create like a, let's go back to our kind of random cluster type thing. We can now use the pitch to offset the start position because we're just basically adding MIDI notes on top. Let's maybe see if we can do some more with that envelope. Make it less clicky. We can turn the voices down as well. We don't need 32 voices. Let's go for 6. So you can play around with the arpeggiator settings to get different kind of tones for a single note, which is nice. And you can get percussive as well. We don't need to have a high attack on the, well, a long attack on this. We can just pull this, get these kinds of things. So you can see we're just jumping around these notes here, but that's actually jumping around this part of the sample. If I pull the MIDI notes down, we go to C3, you can see that we're around this part of the sample. But it doesn't stop there. We can add more samples. So let's just add more of these like cheesy vocal samples. Actually, I'm just going to delete that and just... yeah, stop. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to take in, yeah, there's loads of these. I can't remember where I got them. It's probably internet somewhere. Okay, I'm just going to drag in, I don't know how many there are. Let's see, 117 samples. Okay, so with all of them selected in the kind of zone editor, I'm going to turn the scale down for all of them. So they're all going to play at their original speed. And they're all globally going to have their sample offset determined by the MIDI key. So that means that we can have like loads of samples to jump around as well as the start position for each sample. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to map each of those samples to their own velocity. And then I'm going to use my good friend, the velocity plugin, to kind of use it to access which sample I want. So let's kind of start with the first one. Oh, hang on. Let's turn the random off and go for an output high of 1. So that's the first sample. See? Okay, it's a bit loud. Where are the meters? Right, let's just close some stuff here. I guess I could turn it down here. There we go. So we're currently hovering around the first sample kind of at the start of it. Now if I turn this button on here, then this will basically ping the currently selected sample to the viewer. So as I increase the output high of the velocity, we can go to the next sample along. Whoa, that one's got a bit of noise at the start. Okay. Okay, it's very silly, but like exciting, you know, because like it's sound design, you know, sound design's exciting. I'm just gonna have another drink. Okay, so let's increase the random on the velocity to basically every new MIDI note is going to jump to a new sample and see what we get. Oh my goodness, what have I done? This is too fast. That's basically mass hysteria. Or like I don't know, everyone, hundreds of people going berserk. I don't know. Or it's like a, you know, a sort of British high street at about 11:30 on a Friday. So as we decrease the amount of random on the velocity, then we can sort of center on a cluster of samples. You see how we're kind of hovering around these ones. Okay, I went a little bit crazy with the envelope there for comic effect. Let's back it off a bit. Okay, so yeah, you can hear now that we're kind of jumping around a few samples because the random velocity is set to 1. So as I increase the random velocity, we're going to jump around a larger cluster of samples. And as I adjust the output high, we move to a different position. And so as I increase the pitch, we move to a different start position of those cluster of samples. So you can get these very blurry kind of weird sounds. You know, you can use whatever samples you want. Maybe you've got like 100, you know, guitar samples or whatever, or something more musical, you know. That's interesting. Okay, let's use the time to velocity thing here to give us a different envelope for each random velocity. Give us more voices. What's going on here? Yeah, it's kind of like a sort of granular radio station, but it's not really, because it's all done with MIDI. Really, all we're doing is we're just sending a super fast stream of MIDI notes into the sampler and telling the sampler to do certain things based on the way that how it relates to the MIDI. You get nice rhythmic stuff as well. It's very flexible. It's like, just chuck in a load of sounds and just mess about and something might happen. It's quite fun watching the waveforms jump about. It's actually giving me a bit of a headache. Look at that go. It's just silly. It might break my monitor. I don't know. It's constant strobing of yellow and black. Anyway, yeah. So, yeah, that was it really. So basically, check out the key to sample offset feature. I love it. I've been doing like loads of stuff with it. With the arpeggiator, you just drop a sound in, pull in the arpeggiator, set the key to sample offset, and just use your keyboard as like a little space, like a little kind of zone selector for your sample, and experiment with different styles to get these different rhythmic patterns, resample it, or go super fast and try doing more sort of clustery stuff. Okay, I'm going to go and put this on my Patreon now, where if you would like to support me there, you can, and download this set and a whole load of other things going back years and years and years, basically everything. My life is basically on there, and it all goes towards giving me motivation to make more stuff like this. I hope you enjoyed that. See you again very soon.